Let's talk about the invisible rulebook that big, global companies are supposed to follow. It's called the OECD Guidelines, and really, it's all about making sure that business is done responsibly. We're going to break down what it all means. Think about it. The phone in your hand, the clothes you're wearing, even your coffee, it all comes from these massive global supply chains. So who's actually making sure that the companies behind these products are behaving ethically? Who's setting the rules?
Well, that's where these OECD guidelines come in. It's basically a shared agreement between 51 different governments on what responsible business looks like. You can think of it as a global rulebook, setting a baseline standard for companies no matter where in the world they operate.
So what's at the very heart of this rulebook? It all boils down to one incredibly important idea. Businesses have a responsibility to respect human rights. Simple as that. This isn't just a nice to have, it's the absolute foundation of the whole thing. And the standard is crystal clear. It says that businesses must avoid violating people's human rights. And if they find out they're connected to any kind of negative impact, they have to deal with it. This isn't just about following local laws. It's a global expectation.
Okay, that's a fair question, right? I mean, if you're a huge corporation with thousands of suppliers all over the world, how can you possibly keep an eye on everything? It sounds almost impossible. Well, the guidelines don't just set the goal. They actually lay out a plan for how to do it. And that plan is called due diligence. It's basically a three-step process. First, you have to look at your entire operation and figure out where the human rights risks are, both the ones that are happening and the ones that could happen. Second, you integrate that knowledge and actually do something to prevent or fix those problems. And third, you have to keep track of how you're doing and tell people about it. It's a cycle, right? Assess, act, track, and repeat.
But it's not enough to just have a general, one-size-fits-all approach. The guidelines are really clear that companies need to pay special attention to the people who are most likely to be harmed. It's all about focusing your energy where the risk is greatest.
And they spell out exactly who we're talking about. People like human rights defenders, who are often on the front lines speaking out against corporate abuse. Indigenous peoples, whose land and culture can be directly impacted. And really anyone who's at a higher risk because they're part of a marginalized or vulnerable group.
And look, this quote from the guidelines themselves says it all. You have to pay special attention. It means being proactive, digging deeper, and making sure you're not just avoiding harm in general, but actively protecting those who need it most.
Now, this whole idea of protection obviously extends to a company's own workforce. So let's shift gears a little and talk about the specific standards for employees and workers.
It breaks down pretty simply. On one side, you have the rights that businesses have to uphold, things like letting workers form unions and bargain together, providing a safe workplace, and making sure everyone is treated equally. And then on the other side, you have the wrongs, the practices that have to be completely stamped out.
And when it comes to those wrongs, the guidelines are not messing around. They draw two absolutely unbreakable, non-negotiable red lines in the sand. There is zero tolerance and zero wiggle room on these two issues.
The first one is simple and direct. Businesses must help end child labor, period. It's a fundamental principle, recognizing just how damaging this is, and it puts the responsibility on companies to be part of the solution.
And the second one is just as powerful. Companies must contribute to getting rid of all forms of forced labor. That means everything from debt slavery to human trafficking. There are no excuses. These two rules really are the moral bedrock of the entire section on labor.
So, we've gone through some big ideas here, from high-level human rights principles all the way down to these very specific, unbreakable rules for workers. Let's just take a step back and ask, why does any of this matter? What's the point of this global rulebook?
If you boil it all down, it comes to this. 1. Respect human rights, everywhere, no exceptions. 2. Protect the people who work for you with fair wages and safe conditions. And 3. You have to know what's happening in your supply chain and be ready to fix the problems you find. That's the core of it.
Which leaves us with one final, and maybe the most important question. The rulebook is written, the standards are pretty clear, but at the end of the day, they're recommendations. So what does it really take to turn these words on a page into a reality for people all over the world? That's the real challenge, isn't it?